The silence lasted only a second. Then Daniel leaned back against the kitchen counter, folded his arms, and looked at me as if the discussion were already over. "My parents and Ethan are moving in tomorrow," he said casually. "They'll be here before lunch." I stared at him, waiting for the smile that never came. "They're visiting." "No," he shrugged. "They're moving in permanently." I laughed once, thinking I had misunderstood. "Daniel, this is my house. We haven't even unpacked everything yet. Why would you make a decision like that without talking to me?" His expression hardened. "Because you don't get a vote." The words landed harder than I expected. "It's decided." I searched his face for some trace of the man I'd married, hoping this was stress or grief talking. His older brother had lost his wife 6 months earlier, and his parents had been struggling financially. I understood they needed support. But this wasn't asking for help. This was taking over my life. Daniel reached for his car keys. "They'll be here first thing tomorrow with the moving truck. Don't make this awkward." He walked out the front door without another word. I didn't chase after him. I didn't argue. I simply whispered, "Okay." He smiled. He actually smiled. He thought I'd given up. He had no idea that before the sun came up, everything about this house would change. That home had been my dream for almost 8 years. Every overtime shift, every canceled vacation, every old car I kept driving long after I wanted something newer, all of it had been leading to one goal: owning a home that belonged to me. I had bought it entirely with cash using savings I had built long before Daniel and I married, along with careful investments that I had managed myself. Signing those closing papers had been the proudest moment of my life. The housewarming party was supposed to celebrate that achievement. Instead, my husband had turned it into an announcement that my home was becoming his family's home. An announcement I hadn't even been invited to make. That evening, after Daniel left, I heard him laughing through the patio doors while talking on his phone outside. "Everything's ready," he said confidently. "Bring everything. You won't have to worry about another place again." My stomach tightened. He wasn't discussing a temporary stay. He was making permanent promises. I quietly picked up my phone. Over the next several hours, I made call after call, printed every ownership document, updated security access, and arranged for a licensed locksmith to arrive before sunrise. By midnight, I had stopped hoping Daniel would come to his senses. Instead, I prepared for the morning he thought would belong to him. Just after 9 o'clock the next day, I watched from the front window as Daniel's SUV turned into the driveway. Behind it rolled a moving truck. His parents climbed out smiling. His widowed brother stepped down carrying boxes. Daniel walked toward the front door with complete confidence. Then he suddenly froze. Something about the house wasn't the way he'd left it. Daniel stood motionless at the bottom of the front steps, staring at the front door. The polished brass lock had been replaced with a matte black electronic deadbolt. The small decorative planter that had always sat beside the entrance was gone, replaced by a security camera that hadn't been there the day before. He frowned. "What?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out his key. Behind him, his parents were chatting excitedly while his brother, Ethan, adjusted a heavy box in his arms. "Hurry up," Daniel's mother called. "Let's get these boxes inside." Daniel slid the key into the lock. It didn't fit. His smile disappeared. 3 weeks earlier, none of this had seemed important. The day I received the keys to the house, Daniel had wrapped his arms around me. "You did it," he said. "I can't believe it's finally ours." At the time, the word *ors felt comforting. Marriage meant sharing a life together. I had smiled and leaned against him. "I still can't believe I actually paid for it. You've worked harder than anyone I know." For a brief moment, everything felt exactly the way I'd imagined. That feeling didn't last. The first strange comment came during dinner with his parents. His mother slowly walked through the master bedroom while I was showing everyone the finished renovations. She smiled. "I've always wanted a room with morning sunlight." I laughed politely. "It really is beautiful." She nodded thoughtfully. "I'll have to decide where to put my dresser." I stopped walking. "I'm sorry, what?" She chuckled as if she had made an innocent joke. Daniel laughed with her. "You know, Mom, everyone moved on." I tried to convince myself I had misunderstood. A few days later, his father stood inside the garage with his hands on his hips. "This would make an excellent workshop." I smiled politely. "It'll probably stay a garage." He barely acknowledged my answer. "We'll clear out those shelves." "We'll." Not asterisk you. "Not if you want." "We'll." Daniel simply stood beside him, nodding. The comment that unsettled me most came from Ethan. Despite losing his wife months earlier, he had always treated me kindly. While we stood in the driveway, he looked toward the side yard. "So where should I park permanently?" I blinked. "Permanently." Daniel answered before I could. "We'll figure it out." Again. "We'll." No one had asked me anything. Every conversation assumed the decision had already been made. That night, I finally confronted Daniel. We were folding laundry when I quietly asked, "Has your family been talking about living here?" He didn't even look up. "Their family." That isn't what I asked. He sighed dramatically. "You're reading too much into harmless conversations." "I don't think I am." He tossed a towel into the basket. "You've become really protective over this house. I paid for it. So now we're keeping score." I stared at him. "This isn't about money." "No," he replied. "It's about you acting like my family isn't welcome." I never said that. "Then stop making problems where there aren't any." The conversation ended exactly where it always did, with me apologizing simply to keep the peace. But something inside me had begun to change. Instead of dismissing my instincts, I started paying attention. Daniel became strangely secretive. He stepped outside whenever his parents called. He lowered his voice whenever I entered the room. Twice, I caught him scrolling through digital copies of the house floor plans. One evening, I overheard him say, "The upstairs rooms are already spoken for." The moment he noticed me, he ended the call. "It's work." I didn't believe him. Not anymore. The next afternoon, while Daniel was at the office, I opened the folder containing every document from the home purchase. The deed, the closing statement, the title, the insurance paperwork. Every page carried one name. Mine. Only mine. I called my real estate attorney to confirm there hadn't been any mistakes. "There aren't," she assured me. "You're the sole owner." I thanked her, hung up, and placed every document into a secure folder. For the first time since buying the house, I stopped wondering whether I was overreacting. Instead, a far more unsettling question took its place. If Daniel knew he had no legal claim to the house, why was he behaving as though it already belonged to his entire family? The moving truck rumbled to a stop behind Daniel's SUV. Within seconds, doors swung open and people began climbing out. His parents looked excited. His widowed brother, Ethan, climbed down more slowly, carrying a folder under one arm. Two cousins followed with boxes, and a pair of family friends came along to help unload furniture. One of the neighbors walking his dog smiled. "So today's the big move." Daniel grinned proudly. Finally getting everyone together. He clapped his hands. "Come on, everybody. Let's make this quick. Family belongs together." People started reaching for boxes before anyone had even stepped inside. I watched quietly from the living room window. No one knew I was standing there. No one except Daniel knew I even lived in the house. And somehow, he had managed to convince them it was his. Outside, his mother pointed toward the front porch. "I'll take the downstairs bedroom. My knees can't handle stairs anymore." His father nodded. "I'll organize the garage this afternoon." One cousin laughed. "This is going to feel like the old family home again." Daniel smiled wider. "It'll be better." Then he walked confidently toward the front door. He slipped his key into the lock. It wouldn't go in. He frowned. He pulled it back out and tried again. Nothing. He looked down at the key, as though it had somehow changed overnight. His father frowned. "Problem?" "No." Daniel forced a laugh. "Wrong key." He reached into another pocket and pulled out a second one. That didn't fit either. The conversations behind him slowly faded. Boxes were lowered to the driveway. Even the neighbors stopped walking. Daniel pressed the electronic keypad. The screen flashed. Access denied. He tried again. Another denial. His confidence began slipping. "What is this?" He pulled out his phone and tapped the app that controlled the front door. Instead of unlocking, a message appeared. "Access removed." His face drained of color. He pounded on the door. "Trisha." No answer. He knocked harder. "Trisha, open the door." A few seconds later, I unlocked the door from inside. I stepped onto the porch wearing a calm smile. "Good morning." His mother smiled warmly. "Perfect timing, dear. We're ready to move in." I looked at the moving truck, then at the boxes, then back at Daniel. "No," I said politely, "you're not." The smile disappeared from every face. Daniel lowered his voice. "What are you doing?" I met his eyes. "I should be asking you that." He glanced nervously toward his family. "This isn't the place." "I think it's exactly the place." His jaw tightened. "Move." "No." His voice became sharper. "Stop embarrassing me." I folded my hands in front of me. "I'm embarrassing you." I looked past him at everyone gathered in the driveway. I'd actually like to ask one question before anyone carries another box. Silence settled over the group. I looked directly at Daniel. "Can you explain why you promised people they could live in a house you don't own?" A murmur spread through the relatives. Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Oh, come on." He turned toward them. "She's joking." I didn't smile. Daniel straightened his shoulders. "We're married," he announced confidently. "What's hers is mine." I reached into the folder I had been holding. Without raising my voice, I handed him a certified copy of the property deed. "Read the owner's name." He glanced at the first page. His expression changed instantly. His mother leaned over. "What is it?" He folded the document before anyone else could see it. I calmly held up a second certified copy. "This one's for everyone." His father took it first. His eyes moved across the page. He read the ownership section twice. Then he slowly looked at Daniel. "It only lists Trisha." Daniel quickly interrupted. "We agreed the paperwork would stay in her name." I tilted my head. "We did." He swallowed. "You know what I mean." I answered quietly. "If we made that agreement." I looked him directly in the eyes. "Show them where I signed." No one spoke. The silence felt heavier than any argument. Then Ethan, still holding the folder under his arm, looked from Daniel to me in complete confusion. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Wait." He frowned. "You told us the house was yours." Ethan's words hung in the air. "You told us the house was yours." Every eye turned to Daniel. For the first time since everyone had arrived, he had no immediate response. He looked at his brother, then at his parents, before forcing a weak smile. I said it was asterisk or asterisk house. No, Ethan replied, shaking his head. You said you bought it. You even told me Trisha was excited for all of us to live together. Daniel's father slowly lowered the copy of the deed. Daniel, what exactly did you tell us? Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. You people are blowing this out of proportion. No, I said quietly. I'm simply asking for the truth. His mother stepped closer to him. You told us this was already settled. It was supposed to be. She frowned. What does that mean? Daniel looked at me with growing frustration. It means she changed her mind. I was never asked. You didn't need to be. The words escaped before he could stop them. Several relatives exchanged stunned looks. His father stared at him. She didn't need to be asked about her own house. Daniel realized what he had admitted, but it was too late. Ethan slowly placed his box on the driveway. His shoulders sagged. I sold my apartment. Everyone turned toward him. I accepted an offer last week. He looked directly at Daniel. You said there was no point keeping it because we'd all be living here. I felt my stomach tighten. You sold your apartment. He nodded miserably. The closing is next week. Daniel immediately interrupted. I was trying to help you. No, Ethan replied. You made a promise you couldn't keep. His voice cracked. I would never have sold my home if I'd known this wasn't true. For the first time, I realized just how many lives Daniel's deception had affected. I took a slow breath. There are a few things everyone deserves to know. Daniel immediately stepped toward me. Don't. I ignored him. Last night, after Daniel told me his family was moving in, I spent the evening protecting my home. His mother looked confused. What do you mean? I contacted a licensed locksmith. I pointed toward the front door. Every exterior lock was replaced before sunrise. Daniel's eyes widened. I also removed every digital access code connected to the property. He instinctively looked at his phone. The reason your app stopped working is because your authorization no longer exists. He stared at me in disbelief. You removed me. I removed access to a home you were trying to give away. I reached into the folder beside me. There's more. I pulled out several envelopes. They arrived in my mailbox 3 days ago. His father recognized the envelopes immediately. Our names. I nodded. They're official change of address confirmations. His mother covered her mouth. I never filled those out. I know. Everyone looked at Daniel. He said nothing. I continued. They were submitted online before anyone discussed moving here with me. His father slowly opened one envelope. The address printed inside was unmistakable. My house. His mother whispered, You already changed our mailing address. Daniel looked trapped. I was trying to make everything easier. For who? I asked calmly. No answer came. His father folded the document with trembling hands. So this wasn't temporary. I shook my head. No. Ethan looked at his brother. You told me we'd stay here until I got back on my feet. Daniel remained silent. I spoke softly. That wasn't the plan. Everyone turned toward me. He told me your rooms had already been decided. Your furniture had already been assigned. He spoke as though this house already belonged to all of you. His mother looked horrified. You planned this for weeks. Daniel finally snapped. I did what needed to be done. His voice echoed across the driveway. My brother needed help. My parents needed somewhere to live. Trisha has more than enough space. He pointed at me. She's humiliating all of us because she's selfish. I met his glare without raising my voice. No, Daniel. I held his gaze. Your own decisions are humiliating you. The driveway fell silent. At that exact moment, another vehicle pulled up to the curb. A woman in a dark business suit stepped out carrying a leather folder. She walked calmly toward the house. Daniel recognized her immediately. His face went pale. "My attorney is here," I said. "And she's brought everything we need." The woman stopped beside me and offered a polite nod. "Good morning, Tricia." "Good morning, Ms. Reynolds." She turned to the group, gathered in the driveway. "My name is Rebecca Reynolds. I represent Tricia regarding this property." Daniel took an impatient step forward. "This is completely unnecessary." Ms. Reynolds opened the leather folder without acknowledging him. "I disagree." She removed several neatly organized documents and handed copies to Daniel's parents, Ethan, and the two relatives standing closest. "I believe everyone deserves accurate information." The only sound was paper unfolding. "The property located at this address," Ms. Reynolds said calmly, "was purchased entirely with Tricia's premarital funds." She pointed to the first page. The deed, title, and closing documents identified Tricia as the sole legal owner. She flipped to another page. "There is no joint ownership." Another page. "There is no agreement granting Mr. Daniel any ownership interest." Another. "There is no written authorization permitting anyone else to establish residency." Daniel interrupted. "She's my wife." Ms. Reynolds met his eyes. "And marriage does not transfer ownership of separately titled real estate." No one spoke. The legal reality settled over the group with undeniable clarity. Ms. Reynolds removed another envelope. "There's one more matter." She placed several photocopies on the hood of Daniel's SUV. "These are records confirming that online change of address requests were submitted before Tricia was informed anyone intended to move here." His father stared at the paperwork. "The submission date was nearly 3 weeks ago," Ms. Reynolds finished. She produced one final document. "And according to these security records, duplicate house keys had already been ordered without Tricia's authorization." Daniel looked away. He knew there was nothing left to deny. Every unanswered question suddenly had an answer. This had never been a last-minute act of compassion. It had been a carefully planned takeover. Daniel intended for his parents and brother to move into the house permanently, establish residency immediately, and rely on Tricia to pay the mortgage-free home's taxes, utilities, maintenance, groceries, and every other household expense. He had counted on presenting it as a completed fact, believing she would give in rather than create conflict. He had never expected her to prepare first. Daniel's mother slowly lowered the documents. Her eyes filled with disappointment. "You lied to us." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "I was trying to keep the family together." "No," she replied quietly. "You manipulated all of us." His father shook his head. "You didn't just deceive Tricia." He looked around at everyone gathered. "You deceived your own family." Ethan stepped toward me. "I'm so sorry." His voice was sincere. I believed every word he told me. I nodded gently. "I know." He looked down. "I sold my apartment because I trusted my brother." "You shouldn't have been put in that position." He swallowed hard. "I never wanted to take your home." "I believe you." For the first time that morning, some of the tension eased. The problem had never been Ethan. It had been the person making promises he had no right to make. One by one, the relatives began loading the boxes back onto the moving truck. No one argued. No one blamed me. Several even apologized before leaving. Daniel stood alone in the driveway, while the people he had tried to impress quietly walked away. His mother paused before getting into the SUV. "You need to take responsibility for what you've done." His father added only one sentence. "You've lost something far more valuable than a house." Then they drove away. Ethan gave me one final apologetic nod before leaving with them. Within minutes, The driveway was empty. Only Daniel remained. He looked at me for a long time. "So that's it?" I answered honestly. "No." He frowned. "No. I've already made another decision." I handed him a sealed envelope. He opened it slowly. Inside were divorce papers. His shoulders dropped. "You'd end our marriage over this." I looked at him steadily. "I'm ending it because you believed you could take away my choices, my home and my future, and expected me to thank you for it." He searched for something to say. Nothing came. For the first time since I had known him, he had no control over the conversation. He quietly turned around, got into his car, and drove away. The following week, I hosted the housewarming party that had almost been stolen from me. The guest list looked very different. Every person there had been invited by me. There were no surprise announcements, no demands, no assumptions. Only laughter, good food, and genuine support. As friends admired the home, one of them smiled and asked, "So, does it finally feel like yours?" I looked around the living room I had dreamed about for years. Sunlight poured through the windows. The house was peaceful again. I smiled. It finally feels like home. The divorce was finalized months later. Because the house had always been solely mine, Daniel had no ownership claim. He lost the marriage he had taken for granted, the trust of his parents, and the respect of the very family he claimed to be protecting. As for me, I rebuilt my life one peaceful day at a time. I learned that keeping the peace should never require surrendering your dignity. And I learned that the strongest answer isn't always the loudest one. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let someone else decide your future. The day Daniel told me I didn't get a vote was the day he unknowingly gave up every bit of power he thought he had.